Ladies and gentlemen, honorable ministers and ladies and gentlemen, can we welcome our two presidents? Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you very much. His Excellency, Mr. Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency, Mr. Emmanuel Macron, President of the French Republic, ministers, ambassadors, our host Vice Chancellor, Professor Kupe, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Bon après-midi, bienvenue. I'm honored to be your program director for this afternoon's important event, which will consider how South Africa and France can best cooperate to support Africa in developing its own vaccine manufacturing capacities. In the South African Cabinet, I have the privilege and the honor given by my President, Cyril Ramaphosa, for the portfolio of higher education, science, and innovation. The mission that the President has given me, and of course all of us, is to invest and develop South Africa's human capabilities and innovation capabilities so that we advance the African agenda for sustainable development through science, technology, and innovation. It's a mission which is aligned with the focus of our discussions this afternoon or early evening. The fight against COVID-19 pandemic starkly put us into the spotlight, especially the shameful inequalities that continue to mar Africa's grossly inadequate access to vaccines, amongst other things. It's a situation that needs to be urgently addressed. South Africa greatly appreciates our historic and extensive cooperation with France, including in areas such as education, science, and technology. We have an opportunity this afternoon to ensure that our partnership truly serves African development and eradicate these inequalities. To achieve these objectives, it has to be a true partnership, however, underpinned by values such as joint ownership, shared responsibility, real solidarity, and most importantly also technology transfer when it comes to vaccine development. Monsieur President Macron, the rallying cry of the French Revolution and the motto of the French Republic should inspire us today, I dare say. Liberté, égalité, fraternité. Freedom, equality, and fraternity, ensuring that Africa has its own and strong vaccine manufacturing capacity will indeed ensure a world which is freer, equal, and truly fraternal. Let us also be inspired by South Africa's own motto, diverse people unite and proceed through united and concerted action. I'm confident our speakers this afternoon and your valued guidance and direction, our two presidents, will chart the way forward for us to achieve this ambition. Merci beaucoup. With these words, I then am formally opening this gathering, this high-level dialogue, and I will honestly and frankly request that all our speakers, except our two presidents, stick to 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes. I'm not going to shout at you, but when you see me standing up and walking slowly closer to you, you must know it's time to wrap up, so that we can give our principals their 15 minutes each, and they are able to talk to us. I have therefore the honor and the pleasure to call upon our host, Vice Chancellor of the University of Pretoria, Professor Tawana Kupe, to come and welcome all of us. Professor, Can you please come forward? Thank you very much. Sorry. I'm not taking your minute.
I think if people didn't notice, I was just sprayed by the Minister of Health of South Africa. So I'm actually covered. A very good evening. I would like to make some special welcomes. His Excellency President of the Republic of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, His Excellency President of the Republic of France, Emmanuel Macron, Dr. Blaine Zimande, Program Director and Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, ministers from the South African government and the German government, members of parliament, chief executives of companies and chairmen of boards, members of the University of Pretoria Council led by our chairman, Mr. Kuseni Dlamini, who's also chairman of Aspen Pharmacare, and the executive, Student Representative Council of the University of Pretoria, distinguished guests, partner organizations and media, and all joining us here today. May I extend my very warmest welcome to His Excellency President Emmanuel Macron of the Republic of France. We are proud to host you on African soil, and I'm extremely privileged to speak to you about the University of Pretoria's Future Africa Institute and campus, the place we are meeting today, a vibrant collaborative place where Africa's leading researchers and scholars from across the world and from a broad range of disciplines come together to leverage the benefits of transdisciplinary research in order to address the grand challenges that face Africa and the world. To date, the World Health Organization reports 3.4 million COVID cases and rising across Africa, including 86,000 deaths. The fact that the vaccine rollout across the continent has been delayed due to a lack of resources is just another example of African lives left to be at risk or on hold, while wealthier nations hit the reset button and move forward. It is true, though, that in this global health crisis, African universities came to the party, working with African governments and the private sector. They did everything, from manufacturing sanitizers, personal protective equipment, vaccine trials, modeling of the pandemic, and much more. It is in response to multiple ongoing global disruptions that the University of Pretoria is rethinking, reimagining, and repositioning for a more proactive role to address local and global challenges. We have launched 4 key transdisciplinary innovation platforms which will enable us to become much more impactful in response to global and local challenges. Future Africa is one of those platforms. Through our world-class facilities, we are committed to excellence and quality knowledge co-creation that positively changes society. Future Africa thrives on the principle of achieving transformative outcomes through partnerships and collaborations to achieve what we could not achieve alone. In December 2018, we as the University of Pretoria signed a memorandum of understanding with the Montpellier University of Excellence, becoming the first and only Anglophone university in Africa to be invited to enter into a formal collaboration. Now, Montpellier University of Excellence in France is a wonderful initiative. It is the French government brought together 19 organizations in Montpellier University to create a superior, if you like, university to deal with global and local challenges in partnership with other universities. The French Prime Minister and the Minister of Higher Education in France launched this initiative in 2017. To date, Muse, as we call it, has established 10 official partnerships with carefully selected universities around the globe. I'm proud that since the establishment of an international advisory board for Muse, I've attended all meetings and chaired the 2022-day virtual meeting. At this meeting, the board chose 3 thematic areas for collaboration going forward: agriculture and food, environment, and One Health. In the concept of One Health, we cover both human, animal, and plant health. We are proud of our partnership with Montpellier University and look forward to more opportunities for co-creation of knowledge for mutual benefit with this university, which is as committed as we are to addressing the key challenges of our time. The future is only through partnerships and collaborations. Without that, knowledge, which knows no borders and boundaries, cannot impact the fate and the sustainability of our humanity. President Macron, later this year, you will host the French Africa Summit in Montpellier. I think it's 8 to 10 October. I'm pleased to inform you that the Advisory Board of Muse will hold this meeting around the same time at Montpellier. So I will be there. So Presidents Ramaphosa and President Macron, allow me to say, see you there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, without taking more time, is Professor Kwarisha Abdul Karim, who is the co-director of CAPRISA on the needs for vaccines on the African continent. Professor, over to you, and we have our deal.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished guests, all protocols observed. It is an honor and privilege to be part of this important dialogue today, and I thank the organizers for the opportunity to share some of my thoughts with you on enhancing vaccine production and manufacturing capacity in Africa. The COVID-19 pandemic has reminded us of our mutual interdependence and our shared vulnerability as human beings. Globally, there have been more than 168 million cases and a devastating 3.4 million deaths. No country has been spared. Africa has almost 5 million reported cases, identified through 47 million tests undertaken on this continent. Africa experienced a less severe than expected first wave of infections. The second wave was much more severe, partially due to the identification of variants. And viral transmission continues unabated, and a third wave looms. About 14,000 viruses from 41 countries have been genetically sequenced, confirming that all the variants of concern are circulating in Africa. While the announcement of efficacious COVID-19 vaccines was met with great hope, inequitable vaccine access rapidly reared its head. By yesterday, 1.8 billion vaccine doses were administered, 68% in the top 6 countries. All these countries developed vaccines or manufactured vaccines. By comparison, the bottom 124 countries have received less than 5% of all the vaccine doses in the world. So far, 28 million vaccine doses have been administered in Africa. Worryingly, 8 countries have yet to receive their first COVID vaccines, and 22 countries have yet to reach 1% vaccine coverage. Despite 6 vaccines being tested in vaccine trials in African countries, they've had to join the back of the queue for vaccines. But Africa is making progress in overcoming these impediments through COVAX, access initiatives with vaccine companies, and the African Vaccine Acquisition Task Team. The latter is using the continent's collective buying power to help secure adequate vaccines for the continent. While there are now enough vaccines to provide a dose to 20% of the world's population, Africa only has enough doses for 2% of its population. This deplorable tenfold inequity in vaccine availability should never be allowed to occur again. What can we learn from countries that successfully secured vaccines through local manufacturing? Firstly, the critical importance of government leadership and political commitment. Secondly, long-term investments in science and technology, especially in vaccine manufacturing infrastructure and facilities. Thirdly, the value of public-private partnerships. Fourthly, access to IP, such as the voluntary license obtained by the Serum Institute of India for Covishield. Kudos to South Africa and India for leading the initiative to secure the IP rights waiver for COVID-19 vaccines. Fifth, long-term investments in training scientists, technicians, and engineers for the high-level technical expertise required to run vaccine manufacturing facilities. Sixthly, collaborations across countries and continents, like the one we are witnessing today, are essential. Today is a seminal point where the dialogue and collaboration between South Africa and France is aiming to set us on the path to achieving security of vaccine supply on the continent. The Africa CDC, through the Partnership for African Vaccine Manufacturing, together with universities and research centers across Africa, such as CAPRISA, WHRI, and the Pasteur Institutes, have an important role to play in supporting this initiative. Africa's self-reliance in vaccines is a laudable dream, one that will take some time to realize. But importantly, it will bring security of vaccine supply in the future. Building back better together with resilience and being better prepared for future pandemics will require nothing less. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Prof. That was real professorial discipline. Thank you very much. Now, I call upon Dr. Boitumelo Sumete Makukutlela, who is the CEO of the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, for her brief remarks. Was assist.
Good evening, Honorable President Macron. Good evening, Honorable President Ramaphosa. Let me do this. Good evening to all the esteemed ministers representing the various governments, as well as all the esteemed delegates in this House. I'll be talking about health regulation and the importance of harmonization within health sector regulation. As the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, our mandate is to ensure that all health products, that is medicines, medical devices, complementary medicines, biological products, including vaccines, as well as clinical trials, are conducted to the utmost highest level of regulatory compliance. Our mandate requires that we ensure that all the health products are safe, of good quality, are efficacious, as well as are good performing medical devices. Our role as a regulator does not end when we register a product. It continues along the product life cycle. We monitor the performance of the product as it's been made available to the public. And with these COVID vaccines, we will be playing a critical role in monitoring the safety of these vaccines. We've already implemented a Match Safety app wherein, as of today, we've already received reports on any of the safety effects that are noted from these vaccines. And we're working closely with the Department of Health, working closely also with the manufacturers to ensure that these are adequately managed. From a clinical trial perspective, if I can just pick up from Prof. Karim's remarks, we were quite thrilled as a regulator to have been pivotal in enabling that the country participates in a large number of the vaccine clinical trials that took part in the country. This was not limited only to the vaccines, but also South Africa participated in clinical trials for COVID therapies, etc. This illustrated the strength in the research capability that we have in the country, but also the technical capability that exists. And I think that country needs to be commended for that. As a health product regulator, we don't work in silos, ministers and presidents. We work very closely with the French regulator. Particularly, we've got very close relationships with the European Medicines Agency, wherein we work with them under a number of review processes. A lot of our processes as South Africa are actually aligned with the European Medicine Agency. And so we are working and striving towards creating harmonization. Quite important also is our role in the WHO programs. As we speak, we've got members of the SAPRA team that are part of the evaluation team of the vaccines under WHO. We apply stringent reliance on the WHO pre-qualification processes and also work very closely with them around ensuring that all inspections that ensure good quality products, we conduct them jointly. So as a regulator, we strive to ensure that we partner with others. Furthermore, we play a critical role in the African continent with the other regulators. Particularly, I'd like to mention the African Medicines Regulatory Harmonization Initiative, as well as the African Vaccines Regulatory Fora, where again, we're working with regulators on the continent to jointly review the applications. Now, these harmonized mechanisms, they enable a number of aspects. They enable joint evaluation processes. They enable that we rely on each other's work, that we share the work we do. But quite importantly for us as a continent is to ensure that we build the capacity that's required for us to be able to efficiently assess these regulatory processes. The benefits of collaborative work sharing and reliance processes is that they enable accelerated access and efficient timeframes to access to health products across various countries. There were times when regulators were seen as barriers, but we're wanting to change that paradigm. We want to ensure that us as regulators in the African continent play a role of an enabler. And this is quite important considering the conversation we're having today. We want to ensure that collaboratively we build local capability and capacity in having our own strength as African regulators to evaluate the products that are supplied. But also it creates cohesion. In the context of today's discussion, regulatory harmonization is a critical enabler to make sure that South Africa is a viable location and destination for manufacturers. We understand as a regulator that industry, government, and investors require certainty in terms of regulatory timeframes. And as SAPRA, we're working hard to position ourselves as an enabler. And not only doing that on our own, but working with the other regulators across the region under the African Medicines Regulatory Harmonization. We want to position ourselves as an enabler so that we can support the country as it builds local manufacturing capacity. We want to ensure that we leverage harmonized as well as reliance approaches to enable accelerated access to the most critically required health products by those in the Republic of South Africa. And with those words, I'd like to thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Tumi. Can I now request Mr. Mark Diop, the Director General of the International Finance Corporation. You're most welcome.
Let me thank you, our host, President Ramaphosa, and President Emmanuel Macron for their leadership on mobilizing partners to build resilient health system in Africa. As stated during last week's summit on financing the African economies, investing in the health sector is a priority for African leaders. It's a priority for world leaders. It's a priority for IFC. It's a priority for a lot of partners. The reason why we are here, President Macron, President Ramaphosa, is because we are committed to help build pharmaceutical capacity in Africa, including vaccine production. Also to respond to a call that many African and world leaders launched to do things differently when it comes to health systems in Africa. Our interventions today will be around 3 pillars. First, vaccine. helping speed the production, availability, and take-up of vaccines and treatments for COVID-19 and other vital health needs. Second, access to medical equipment. Third, building resilient health systems by creating and developing markets in the health sector. Vaccine first. Together, we can support countries in Africa, including South Africa, to accelerate vaccine manufacturing on the continent. The two intervenants have eloquently explained why and give us some indication on how to do it. Timely and equitable access to life-saving drugs and vaccine across the world calls for global cooperation. And that's precisely what we are doing today at the University of Pretoria. I will let the head of state to tell us more about the discussion that was held and the outcome of this discussion, because it was done under their leadership, and specific requests were made by them around vaccine manufacturing, particularly in this country. We are also working in other countries, including Rwanda, including Senegal, on this very important agenda, because we believe that the need on the continent is such that we need to have a few areas and places where we can support the production of drugs and vaccine in Africa. We need also to improve access to medical equipment. Just this morning, we launched a new partnership with GE Health and the NISIA Bank of Côte d'Ivoire as part of a IFC 300 million Africa medical equipment facility to help smaller healthcare businesses in Africa to access finance and purchase and lease vital equipment to cure people. This was part of an initiative that we have been asked to launch about supporting medium-scale enterprises and small-scale enterprises in Africa. Unlocking access to finance can save life now and will, in the long run, strengthen healthcare systems across the continent. Let me end by talking about creating and developing markets in the health sector. Throughout Africa, COVID-19 is putting pressure on already very weak healthcare systems, making poorer communities even more vulnerable. The private sector is stepping up to address this challenge with innovative solutions. IFC is working with partners to rapidly build capacity not only for vaccine production, but across the value chain with the goal of strengthening health systems. Building a resilient health system will require increasing the testing capacity and making it cheaper. That's why we are partnering with companies to expand mobile testing and treatment units across Africa, focusing on dense urban settings where access to healthcare are limited. We are successfully piloting it in South Africa with the modular clinics in South Africa, which are allowing to reach population which are out of the formal health systems. Our aim is to scale up this type of business model with the goal of closing the massive gap in primary care access across Africa. We could not control, Mr. President, the arrival of COVID-19 and the impact it had on our life, but we can definitely and certainly control what we choose to make of this moment, and we can choose to not only recover, but to build more and to build better. I would like to thank you, and I look forward to working with our partner to support the vision of our head of state. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Diop. I like the way you are doing your work, because also the way you are cleaning takes into account the different heights. Thank you very much. Can I now quickly, now that we have heard from our scientists, the regulator and the financier, now it's time to hear from the manufacturers now of the vaccines. Can I then call upon Dr. Morena Makwana, the CEO of our own BioVac. Thanks, Lord.
Thank you, Minister. Good evening to President Macron. Good evening to President Ramaphosa and to the ministers and to all the delegates that are here. I'm very happy to to be here as a proud representative of a South African company that I'd like to expand a little bit in terms of a case study. We're at a university, so I think it's probably good that we talk about case studies, because we have a live case study of what is possible, not only in South Africa, but also on the continent. In November 2020, just a few months ago, the program director here, being our Minister Nzimande, launched a vaccine called Hexaxim, that's the brand name. It was actually a launch of the start of vaccine manufacture in South Africa after more than 20 years of no production taking place. The last vaccine that was produced in South Africa was in 2001, and after almost 20 years, in November 2020, the first product was produced in South Africa. How did that come about? And so let's have a look at this case study in terms of what is possible on the continent. The democratic government of South Africa, soon after 1994, had a look and realized that there needs to be a revival of the vaccine manufacturing industry. That's how our company BioVac was formed. It was formed as a partnership between the public sector and the private sector, and hence Minister Nzimande refers to it as our own company. That vision, and we've been slowly and steadily putting together capability when the word vaccines was not very sexy to many people. Now everybody knows about vaccines, and we're very happy that people are talking about vaccines. However, we've been building this industry when the buzzword called vaccines was not very sexy. Now, how did this all culminate? So we would like to praise ourselves and say we did it all on our own. However, we didn't. We had to strike partnerships, firstly with our own government that had to support us, first and foremost. We had to go to development finance institution, even our own development finance institution, to access funding. But we also needed partnerships. And what we had to look at is who's going to partner with us in South Africa and give us the technology that is very complex. After many years, I'm very happy to announce that I remember vividly doing a trip and coming to Lyon, to Sanofi, and it was in 2010, and we were negotiating a tech transfer at the time. Sanofi, we wanted this product, which was a 5-valent product. They said, no, wait. There's a better one that's coming up, which is a 6-valent. And I'm illustrating this coming to the point when we look about COVID-19 vaccines and what needs to happen going forward in terms of the partnerships that need to be struck so that Africa can be able to do that. So we needed to have partners, and Sanofi was the first to partner with BioVac, and we're very happy that last year we were able to commence production. And shortly after this year, we'll be doing a second product against a pneumonia vaccine. Now, these are routine vaccines. Okay, these are routine vaccines that are important. It's important that our children get vaccines, but it's also important that the facilities get to be sustainable through routine manufacture. This is so that we can upscale when pandemics like this come. So as we look forward towards COVID-19 vaccines, I think it's quite important that we recognize that firstly, Africa has the capability. And the speaker coming afterwards will also demonstrate that we have capability. So the fact that Africa is this big black continent that does not have capability, I think, firstly, we can disprove that. We can also prove that we can execute. We can also execute on extremely complex product. This product that BioVac is manufacturing, as I say, it's a 6-in-1. If you take a COVID-19 vaccine, it's a one, we call it antigen, it's just one. This one, it's 6-in-1. That comes with all sorts of complexities. Now, if we can be able to handle such complex vaccines, you can imagine what capability we can have going forward, even when malaria vaccines come, TB, HIV, and all of those come down the line. So I think the message that we'd like to leave you with particularly President Macron, is that firstly, we are open for business as South Africa and Africa. We have the capability. We have demonstrated that. What we do need is the right partnerships and to be forged, and we're obviously seeking the governments to be able to be catalysts and to be able to promote that. Thank you very much.
having visited BioVac, I was worried that you won't stop, like when you produce your assembly line, just never stops. Thank you very much. Let me call another, our own local manufacturer, Aspen, Mr. Stephen Sart, who is the CEO of Aspen. You're most welcome, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Excellencies, distinguished guests, all protocol observed, it's a real pleasure to be here at this auspicious occasion. Thank you. To host you, President Macron, in our country, in Africa, is something we look forward to, and we're very proud to have you here. Thank you. As a company, Aspen has invested heavily in Europe, broadly across Europe, and I do want to make special mention just of a couple of countries. Firstly, our German colleagues, who've been worked very, very hard with us. The professor mentioned earlier the importance of tech transfers. This is a key area and will be an absolute game changer for manufacture in Africa and autonomy. But of course, I want to reserve a really special thank you to the French. The actions of the French people and government have really made this feel like France has felt like Aspen's second home. Thank you. And it's not just because I was in Paris when we won the Rugby World Cup. But I do want to say this to you, President. Your team are a blueprint for how to make people welcome in a country, how to make people want to invest in a country, and how people to stay. Your Department of Trade and Industry phoned me, your minister, on Tuesday. We had a few problems, and they phoned straight away. And it's why we invest in Notre Dame and continue to. So thank you to your team and your ambassador and his team here. Thank you. But what we really want to talk about is this equitable access for vaccines in Africa, and we've been at the forefront of it. We've heard the other speakers. I'm not going to repeat the same points. We're talking about vaccine disproportionality. But, I'm not a politician. I'm a realist. I've got to make decisions in reality, and there are realities in life, and I think if we face those realities, we can find proper solutions. The reality is, logically, you cannot expect a country that makes a vaccine to want to export to other countries before they use for their own people. I think we've just got to accept that's a reality of life. But I think there's another reality. There's no one in the international community that I know that consciously wants Africa to suffer. So we need to find sustainable solutions in partnership with our international colleagues that are palatable to all. And the answer is actually relatively simple. The answer is to capacitate Africa. Aspen has demonstrated what can be achieved within Africa. However, to achieve the sustainable access, because Africa has the demand, so Africa can't keep looking out. We've got to look at ourselves. And the international community, there's two key things that I believe for manufacture. One is security of a demand underwrite, and two, technology licenses and transfers. Those are key. The underwrite's important because it doesn't only give you a confidence in your investment, but what it does do is it keeps your factories active. It means you can retain good people. It means you get the experience. It means you can go to the next step. But probably the most important is the technology transfers, because these give you an independence in your supply chain. And it ensures that no continent is left behind, and so that we all get a chance to end this race of this pandemic together. And to do this, we do need willing partners, and we need Europe to help us here, to help facilitate this access. If we're sincere in our commitment, and the commitment the global community is making is we're only safe when we're all safe, then this commitment to tech transfers will really help Africa to help itself. It will help us to make the continent autonomous and to be able to deal with issues like this timelessly. So from an Aspen perspective, we've made a big pledge. We've made a big pledge to Africa. We've said we're going to have one vaccine for one African within Aspen's own facilities. That's a substantial investment in capacity and capability, but we're committed to do it. We want to help the continent. But we're going one step further, and these discussions are in the infancy, but they're taking off. We don't want to be like in the situation now, we believe the continent more broadly needs to work together. This cannot be about Aspen or South Africa only. This has got to be about capacitating the continent. And we'd like to play a lead role in capacitating the continent. Already, I've had 3 or 4 ministers come to us where we'd like to bring our expertise, your expertise where you can help us. But we want to see not just South Africa or Aspen making vaccines, we want to see the other countries in Africa to make those vaccines. And to that end, we are talking to the African Union and the African CDC. So those are very important things for us. So, I mean, Aspen is a global company, but although we're a global company, we're very proudly headquartered in Africa, and we've got our roots very deeply embedded in our African soil. And we were very proud when we were given the opportunity by Johnson & Johnson. We showcased our global skills and capacities that exist within Africa. And those vaccines were finding their way, over 60% will find their way to Africa. And I might say many I've seen have gone to Europe as well. So we're happy to also be supplying Europe as well. And we've been, as a company, at the forefront of many pandemics. We were here for HIV/AIDS. We were here for multi-drug resistant TB. And more recently around COVID. We're a company that supplied dexamethasone globally to the world. And I'm sure you're aware, because I know your government funded me, but when the spike came and the peak came for COVID and the need for anesthetics globally came in Europe, Aspen was at the forefront of supplying Europe and the rest of the globe. We're a company that works with a purpose, and we've got absolute focus now that we want to get equitable access for Africa in terms, and to create the capacities here. We're not asking for aid. We're not even asking for funding. We'll invest in ourselves. We just need that level of certainty around demand and assistance with those technical transfers. Africa simply cannot accept that 99% of our vaccines are imported. No continent in the world can accept it, and we cannot accept it. And I believe if we can get your help, and by doing this with the tech transfers, we can really enhance the global statement. We're not safe until we're all safe. By now adding an equal opportunity to access this safety at the same time. This is critical for us, is we don't want to be in the back of the queue. We'd like to, and we'd like you to help us, to help ourselves to get to the front of that queue. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sard. Thank you very much for those remarks. Can I now please call upon Mr. Jens Spahn, the Minister of Health of Germany. You're most welcome, sir.
Dear President Ramaphosa, dear President Macron, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today on this special occasion in this exceptional place. The Future Africa Campus is transforming the world through research excellence made in Africa. In fact, this place was built to address the challenges that Africa faces. Therefore, I cannot think of a better place to discuss today's topic. And ladies and gentlemen, let me assure you of Germany's full support in regards to the development and expansion of Africa's own independent pharmaceutical and medical technology industry. As Stephen just pointed out, Africa currently imports 99% of its vaccines. Changing this is our shared goal. Only united, we can solve this. It is a team effort at last. Together with the EU, we want to contribute to the development of production sites in order to ensure that all of Africa will benefit from domestically made products and technologies that are safe and innovative. We have seen what human ingenuity and creativity can achieve if government and states work together with science and companies. The past year has demonstrated this so visibly, namely the development of a safe and effective vaccine against COVID-19 in a record time. For Germany, accelerating the vaccination campaign is a top priority to end this pandemic. No one is safe until everyone is safe. Therefore, Germany supports the ACT Accelerator and COVAX. 1 in 5 COVAX inoculations are financed by Germany. But, ladies and gentlemen, that is not enough. We need and we want Africa to be able to find own solutions to its own challenges. So France and Germany are supporting credit financing to boost its sustainable local manufacturing by the World Bank and the IFC. And even more, I'm glad to say that here this morning I engaged with business leaders like the CEOs of BioVac and Aspen and the South African government, including my dear colleague, the Minister of Health, to enhance already existing areas of cooperation in the production of COVID-19 vaccines and to finalize options for further collaboration. And I can see that we have come a long way already. Our greatest challenge is to create sufficient production capacity around the globe. We are willing to engage in voluntary partnerships between patent holders and producers in order to expand production while maintaining quality standards. We want to be catalysts, as you just named it. Chancellor Merkel has been working on this personally with you, President Ramaphosa. And by the way, she asked me to send her best regards to you. Together with France and with the EU, we want to support technology transfer and the establishment of regional manufacturing centers. We have advanced significantly in supporting South Africa in establishing production facilities here and now. The German government is ready to invest up to 50 million euros and more for this noble endeavor. On this, we work hand in hand with our French friends. We will do this in close cooperation with the African Union and the African CDC. Ladies and gentlemen, by promoting African research and by jointly investing in structures and companies, we will take cooperation between our 3 countries to the next level. I'm therefore personally very grateful for the support that France lends to Africa in the global fight against this pandemic. Being invited to this as part of the French-German tandem is a particular honor for me and underpins our long-standing friendship. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are in this together.
Thank you very much, Minister Spahn, for those commitments and insightful words. That's highly appreciated. It is now my pleasure and honor to call upon the President of the French Republic. I may as well disclose it now that we share a name. My Christian and very Catholic name is Emmanuel, Mr. President. So I can now disclose that, and that I'm very, very proud to be introducing my own namesake, who is the President of the French Republic. Let's give him an appropriate welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Mr. President, DSL, Mr. and Mrs. Ministers, ladies and gentlemen. No, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. And a lot of things have been said, and I don't want to repeat, but we have both a short-term and a long-term issues. The short-term is to deal with this COVID-19 pandemic, and the long-term issue is to deal with the imbalances of the health systems and especially the vaccine production. And I have to say that this COVID-19, and we experienced that all over the place because we had this experience in Europe, and thank you Jens for your speech. This is a big acceleration of what we were trying to do or starting with. And I have to say that during the past year, I've been extremely impressed by the huge acceleration of the African capacities and by the African organization to deal with that. I have to say that what we delivered and you delivered through ACT-A and ACT Accelerator, what CDC Africa delivered is incredible. And I want to congratulate CDC Africa and all these initiatives and your leadership as a champion of all these initiatives, Cyril, because I think nothing was written at the very beginning, but you delivered concrete results. A lot of you said very concretely that if we want to deal with the short-term issue, getting rid of the COVID-19 pandemic, this is our role to help all the different countries, and especially the African continent, precisely to accelerate vaccination. First, for solidarity reasons, because we have to help each other. But second, as well, for a pure efficiency rationale, because there is no way to fix the situation if everybody is not vaccinated. So this is why, from the very beginning, we advocated together the fact that COVID vaccines must be global public good. Universal access is not only a moral imperative, it's a necessity for global health security. So, as I mentioned, we launched a new initiative, the ACT Accelerator, which is co-chaired by South Africa. Chrysoula is here with us, and thank you very much as well for your commitment to this whole dynamic. And part of this ACT Accelerator was obviously all the financial answers, help for the health systems, and I will revert on that. But obviously, we established or rearranged a mechanism, COVAX, to make sure that the most vulnerable countries have access to vaccine. It's definitely not enough, but we have to be sure that it's functioning, that we have to deal with it. So, for me, the first priority is be sure that we maximize the access to these doses everywhere in Africa and all around the world. So with ACT Accelerator, all of us took a lot of commitments. Jens reminded us all the commitments and what we did all together with, as Europeans, but with the Americans as well, and a lot of G20 players. We will increase our international commitment by 500 million euro, both financially and in kind. And now, what we have to deliver is very concrete results. Together with Germany, each of us committed for 30 million doses through COVAX, which means that the European Union committed for 100 million doses. But I'm sure that in the coming weeks and months, the international club can do much more. But this is a top priority because we accumulated a lot of comments. And at a point of time, we will have more doses than the one we do need on the very short run to vaccinate our own people. I think one of the key elements we have to improve on the short run together, but as a remark in a working session, is transparency and accountability for this mechanism. I have to say that I have a personal problem with COVAX, is as a stakeholder of this initiative that we are together, as a stakeholder of COVAX initiative, it's very hard to say and to see how much goes when and where. And we are accumulating the commitments, we are accumulating billions of dollars, some for when and where, I don't know. And at the same time, it's impossible to say to my friend, President Ramaphosa, in 2 months' time, in this country, we will deliver this number of doses. Honestly, this is dysfunctioning. So today, in our current organization, I have to say, we have a lack of transparency and a lack of accountability. So what I propose very concretely is that CDC Africa delivered. You have a super guy as a chairperson and a leader. He's here in the place. He delivered perfect papers. So why don't you task CDC Africa to have a one-pager saying, our goal is to vaccinate 60% of our people by mid-2022. And 40% at least by the end of this year. It means this number of doses of vaccines per country. And in front of that, we will put the commitments, the doses, and the financing. This is the only way to deliver concretely. But today, nobody is able to deliver this crazy document. So we will accumulate the commitments on one side. So I can tell you I will give exactly what I've just done. I will put 500 million additional, and we will do the same at the G7 and so on and so on. But I think it's much more important for you and your people to see this number of doses at this date in this very specific country. At the same time, I have another problem of transparency. Nobody is able to say what is the real cost of the doses we are buying. We are buying doses for our people. We took comments. We are buying through COVAX. You are buying through AVAT. You are sometimes buying them from a bilateral point of view. Nobody is able to say at what price. This is number one fight. I will revert, obviously, on the very big question of IP. But before speaking about IP, the main question is that we have billions of public money in this stuff. Governments, the German government from the very beginning, before even the European Union, the American governments, now afterwards the French governments, and so on. We put a lot of money for research. We accelerated with public money the developments. We put public money to buy doses. We now put public money for this mechanism of solidarity. Come on, we need a regulated price for these doses. This is what we do in our country. And today what's happening is that poor countries and emerging countries are paying much more probably than the rich countries. We are crazy. So number one fight is all together, if we team up, African and European, just to say we need a common pricing. We need transparency on the pricing. This is the best way not to waste public money, because we speak about public money. Not to waste public money and to improve efficiency. So my proposal, beyond the commitments and so on this part, i.e. providing doses and making ACTA, COVAX, AVAT more efficient, is to say, number one issue, let's reshape the whole functioning, two people in charge, one on COVAX side, one on your side, how to get the 60% people vaccinated before mid-2022, 40% before year end, and we will make the process. And second, transparency and accountability for pricing and efficiency. Having said that, the second big issue is obviously how to produce more. And Stephen, you perfectly expressed the main idea. So if we want to produce more, I have to say I will advocate the European spirit. You have to do exactly, the whole world has to do what we did as Europeans. No ban, no restrictions for export. We were very much attacked at the very beginning because we were vaccinating less rapidly than some others. Why? Because half of the doses produced on the European soil are exported. Number one, to the UK. None of the doses produced in UK or in the US are exported till now. Let's speak about facts. So the European way of doing, according to me, is the right one. So number two issue after the how to provide to those, is making vaccines a public good, which means urgently lifting export restrictions on vaccines and raw materials. You spoke about India. Serum Institute was blocked because of some export restrictions of raw materials. So this is extremely important to follow up that, and our sister Ngozi at World Trade Organization is working hard to lift all these restrictions. Number 3 issue, tech transfer. You're perfectly right, this is the critical issue now. Because the normal part of Africa is 20%. The African continent represents 20% of the vaccines being used today in the world, if I refer to the population. Production is 1%. So we have to bridge the gap for the short and mid-run issue. So, obviously, when we speak about tech transfers, there is this big debate, the intellectual property issue. And you rightly raised it, President Ramaphosa with Prime Minister Modi. And I share your view. Let me be clear, wherever intellectual property rights constitute a barrier to global access to the fight against COVID-19, they should be lifted. In order to deal with that, I think we have a two-pronged approach, because we have two ways to deliver this result. Number one is that normally we improved our own system. Thanks to the South African leadership during the past year and what you delivered in HIV/AIDS issue. And normally, we built the collective organization, and the first way should be to see why today the existing exemptions to TRIPS agreements are not fully implemented to deal with this issue. Indeed, normally the way the TRIPS agreements are implemented at the World Trade Organization should allow to lift all these barriers. We have not seen the voluntary and compulsory licensing sharing that such a global pandemic should have called for. And we must simplify the existing compulsory licensing framework. For instance, by making it probably automatic in pandemic times, reducing costs and opening up licenses to export. And this is why I'm a strong believer that we can improve and change the system and got to these results through this way. Marie-Paul is here, and the medicines patent pool was dedicated to this very mission. MPP has made HIV/AIDS and tuberculosis therapies more accessible, including through licenses granted to South African manufacturers. So it should work. The point is, at that time, we didn't sufficiently force the players to use these existing exemptions. If this way is proved not to function, you proposed a second way to deliver and to lift this barrier, which is a waiver in terms of IP during the pandemic and the peak of the pandemic. This is another way to proceed, very different. But I think we have to explore these two ways, because the objective is exactly the same, is to lift IP barriers to be sure that the tech transfer is efficient, rapid, without any costs. But my point is we have to articulate two very important rationales. Number one rationale, never forget that if we got this vaccine, it's because we had innovation. If we have innovation, people invested to get innovation. If you kill the fair return for those people, you will kill innovation. So we cannot say innovation has no cost. This is crazy. On the other side, it is fair to say that this innovation should be transferred to manufacturers for low-income and middle-income countries, because your fair return for innovation should be paid by rich countries, but we should decrease this cost for the other countries. I want to be clear about the final goal and the whole game. Otherwise, we will have misunderstandings, because some people are, in a certain way, picturing you as hostile to innovation, which is crazy. This is not. We spoke together, and I perfectly understood now your concern. It is not to kill innovation and the fair return. It is just to be sure that there is no barrier to rapid access and production here. So what I propose is we work together and we will propose a concrete initiative for the G7, but to deliver this objective, no barrier to access to the vaccine. Let's lift all these barriers and to deliver concrete and efficient tech transfer. This is why, on the very short run, we could all together here some very concrete initiatives to deliver, and I want to thank all the players present in this room. We will do the same type of initiative all around the place in Africa. We are working hard with Senegal and Institute Pasteur in Dakar, with Egypt, Tunisia, Ethiopia. They have a lot of fill and finish industry, but here you are probably one of the most advanced countries in the continent. And I'm very happy that we just finalized a series of great initiatives with Aspen and BioVac. And I think this is great. Jens mentioned them, but we work very hard with Germany, with the United States, with the World Bank Group and IFC, and with the European Union, precisely to help to increase the existing capabilities and to go very fast in order to deliver concrete tech transfers with existing vaccines and to produce them for the final market. This is exactly how to fix the short-term crisis and how to provide an answer to the mid to long-run requirements. So thanks to these different initiatives, we will mobilize the private sector. Here in South Africa, we will mobilize our players, Sanofi, I mentioned BioNTech, and all other players. We will as well work together on human capital. Because one very important thing we have to mention here is that we speak about talents and how to train people to be part of this precisely scale-up of the pharma industry on the continent. So this is why we want as well to invest on skills and training of men and women in this very program. One very last word, beyond that, we have to work very hard on what is not just the vaccine, but the rest of the picture. And let's not forget the treatments, the diagnosis, tests, and so on. South African network genomic surveillance has been instrumental in the detection of the different variants. And honestly, we have to pay tribute to the quality and the excellence of your research, your ability to sequence, and so on. Because without this capacity, probably we would have made a lot of mistakes during the past months. And you can count on the French, German, the European research centers to work very closely with you. And I'm very proud to celebrate today the union of Lancet Laboratories, one of the leading South African laboratories, and Cerba, one of the most renowned actors in this field in France. Cerba Lancet Africa will be the biggest network of medical labs in Africa, serving over 2.2 million patients in the end of the decade. And this is just the beginning of a new story, I'm sure about that. And last but not least, I know that this is another conviction we share. Nothing sustainable can be achieved without robust health systems. Combining quality infrastructures, well-trained professionals, and this is why, you deliver tremendous results for your country. But this is why we decided as well in the whole strategy we are reshaping for France. The minister is pushing the law at the National Assembly right now, but we will invest much more in terms of aid and investment. But our French Development Agency will invest over 2 billion in a program, Health in Common, which is specifically dedicated precisely to this strategy. And I want to thank our development agency because it's exactly what you want to do. And we spoke about that together. I hear how to help you to leverage as well your own capacities, which means beyond this crisis, in order to be able much more prepared for the next crisis, but as well all the other diseases and health issue. And obviously we will follow up this work with the WHO. This is the words I wanted and the convictions I wanted to share. I want to thank you, dear President. I want to thank your leadership. As former President of the African Union, I want to thank your leadership as this champion at the African Union for vaccine and COVID-19. But I want to thank all the African public and private leaders present in this room for what you did during this year. But I'm sure that we can deliver much more. So I will be alongside with you on the different key issues, but as well the main fights, the main battles, and on intellectual property, on TRIPS agreements, on manufacturing, and how to leverage the health system. You can count on me. You can count on France. You can count on Europe. We will deliver together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, President Macron. Thank you very much. Thank you. Important, but also in the medium to long term as to what we need to do working together. Thank you very much. Another round of applause to that, please. Now, it's also my pleasure then to call our own President, Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of the Republic of South Africa, who is our champion for equality of access to vaccines on our continent, amongst many other things that he has been championing at this point in time. Mongameli, it's your turn now for your statement and your response. Let's give him an appropriate welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Program Director, Minister Emmanuel. Blade in Zimande, Your Excellency President Emmanuel Macron, and Minister of Health of the Federal Republic of Germany, who has also honored us by traveling all the way from Germany to be present here, Mr. Jens Spahn. Ministers from South Africa who are here with us today, and deputy ministers, and the Ambassador of France, as well as his counterpart, the Ambassador of South Africa to France, and the Ambassador of the Federal Republic of Germany, Mr. Martin Schäfer. And of course, we're delighted that we've been welcomed by the Vice Chancellor of the University of Pretoria, which has 55,000 students. He was telling me and boasting about it. Professor Tawana Kupe. And I'm also delighted to have here in our meeting, the seminar, Dr. John Nkengasong, who is the leader of the Africa Center for Disease Control Prevention, and the chair of the South African Health Products Regulatory Body, the authority, Professor Helen Rees. And of course, we had the CEO of SAPRA speaking earlier, and the CEO of BioVac, Dr. Morena Makwana. We already heard him. And the CEO of Aspen Pharmacare, Stephen Saad, as well as the chairman of Aspen Pharmacare, Mr. Hussein Dlamini, and members of the diplomatic community who are here with us, who have joined us, and representatives of the scientific community and academia who have come in large numbers. We're delighted. And representatives of business and industry, and I think there's also the Student Representative Council here of this university, and members of the media, and ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to begin by thanking the University of Pretoria for organizing this wonderful seminar on vaccines, particularly the manufacturing of vaccines on our continent. This seminar, President Macron, provides us a very vivid, in my view, demonstration that there is capacity in this country and expertise and experience to manufacture, but this capacity also goes beyond South Africa, as a number of other African countries have also over time developed their own capacity. And I very much liked hearing what Dr. Stephen Saad was saying, as he should know, as the CEO of Aspen, that they would like to collaborate with a number of other countries on the African continent, proving to me once again that there is capacity on the African continent as well. And this capacity is there, and it operates at the high efficiency level, as well as being able to adhere to the strictest standards of safety and quality in developing the vaccines, and would be able to do so. And as such, I would say South Africa is not alone, because there are several others on our continent, and some of them, if they can be named. You know, when I was in Paris at the wonderful summit that President Macron organized on financing African economies, one of the things that I heard was that, no, we just want to focus on 3 countries on the continent, which is South Africa, Senegal, and Rwanda. And it occurred to me then that this was flawed thinking, because there are other countries that do have the capacity and which can gear up to even greater capacity within a short space of time. And that is what prompted me to say the countries of Europe, or the northern countries, must not tell us what is good for us. They must listen to us, because we know what is good for ourselves. And I'm pleased that we have amongst us, you know, President Macron, who takes the trouble to listen and to take in views from other people and other leaders. And that is why we often say President Macron advocates Africa's cause more than many. And he is a real champion for Africa. And I'd like us to applaud him for that, because that's what he does. So other countries that, at the top of my head, I can think of who will have the capacity and who have it is countries like Egypt, Morocco, Kenya, and Ghana. They just are rearing to go, and we need to give them that opportunity. We do have experience in producing vaccines here in this country, and we have ecosystems in place to support their production, and we heard earlier from a number of our speakers here. There is, however, one thing that the African continent cannot do. We cannot continue to wait in the queue for life-saving COVID-19 vaccines. We are waiting in the queue, and we are tired of waiting in the queue. We want to be at the front of the queue, and this must happen now. Because the longer we wait, the more lives we put at risk. I mean, if you look at the figures now, and I'll touch on some of them, we are right at the bottom. From the outset of this pandemic, Africa's response has been unified, it's been coordinated, it's been comprehensive, it has been underpinned by solidarity, and it has been well-informed and well-led. Right at the beginning as the pandemic occurred, and we were very fortunate to have people like Dr. John Nkengasong, who heads our Africa Center for Disease Control. He was in place at the right time. He'd come from Washington, right at the right spot. And we immediately, as the pandemic broke, developed a strategy for the whole continent. A strategy which he drove, and we had a great strategy and which we spread around the continent, and a vast continent of 1.2 billion people, that this is the way we should address this pandemic. And thereafter, as we were running all over the world, trying to get PPEs, because all of a sudden we knew we needed masks, we needed all manner of things that could defend us against the pandemic, we suddenly found that many countries in the north had bought all the PPEs, and supplies were short, and we were competing amongst ourselves as Africans, and we were paying high prices. We immediately came up with the idea that let us set up the African Medical Supplies Platform, and we appointed Strive Masiyiwa from Zimbabwe to be the key person who would head this up. Working with Dr. John Nkengasong, they set up this platform, a platform that brought together various suppliers, and we thought it would just be limited to suppliers in the north and China and so forth. All of a sudden, many suppliers on the African continent started coming up from the woodworks. They also registered on the platform and started selling. A number of those from South Africa sold up to, Minister Patel was telling me that they sold up to 2 billion of PPE products on that platform. Prices had been equalized, and supply was properly determined throughout. And we started getting inquiries from the Caribbean. The Caribbean, as we all know, is the 6th region of our continent, and our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean started also purchasing from this platform because it had made things a lot easier for us. Now, the Africa CDC has played an important role in the continental response, ensuring that we can pool resources as well as expertise. Currently, the Africa CDC is also supporting a number of member states, up to 26, which would be almost half of the members we have on the continent, with things such as oxygen concentrators and accessories. Now, the CDC came into its own during this pandemic and has done fantastic work. Last year, we set up also, as the vaccines became more accessible and available, we realized that Africa would be left behind unless we set up a structure, which President Macron has also referred to, which is the African Vaccine Acquisition Task Team. It is led by Mr. Strive Masiyiwa, so that we can have transparency, we can also have accountability on the availability of vaccines throughout the continent. Now, President Macron, you said you need information. And information is needed on what the requirements are of the continent when it comes to vaccines. That has already been done. The AVAT facility did precisely that, and they did it, Dr. John Gengasong is here. They did it so scientifically. They took the whole continent and did a proper scientific calibration of what every country will need to reach 60% immunity. And it was right to the last person who should be vaccinated. The figures are there. I was actually quite amazed, positively amazed when I saw the figures that the arithmetic or the maths that they had done. So it is there. It has been properly calibrated, and it's all transparent. Nigeria knows what they should get. South Africa knows what we should get in the form of vaccines. But at the AVAT level, we were also able to organize the funding because vaccine manufacturers wanted their money upfront. And we organized a fund of $2 billion so that we could acquire a sizable number of vaccines, and that money was paid to manufacturers. But this is where the challenge then came in for us. But maybe I'll deal with it in a while. So we've done excellent work when it comes to that, but we've also cooperated with COVAX, the COVAX facility, as well as we've been negotiating with a number of these manufacturers as Africa CDC. Now, as African countries, we are immensely grateful to the solidarity display that we've seen around the world. And when it comes to a country like France, for its own ongoing support for Africa's vaccine acquisition. We're grateful for that. We welcome France's recent contribution of an additional 30 million doses to COVAX, working together with Germany, and 500 million euros in multilateral funds to buy diagnostics, therapeutics, and vaccines. We're grateful for that. Now, despite these and other contributions, vaccine coverage just on the African continent is just 2%. To date, less than half of 1% of the continent's population is fully vaccinated. Access is our biggest and the most dangerous challenge. Vaccines are flooding into upper income countries, but they're just trickling into Africa, even as we speak now. This runs completely contrary to our aspirations to build a world founded on human rights for all, where there is universal access to vaccines by all the peoples of the world who need to be vaccinated. It also undermines the global effort to defeat this virus. For as long as the virus continues to spread in one part of the world, it remains a threat to the whole world. And we know how this virus started spreading. It started spreading from one location in the world, and in no time it engulfed the whole world. So if we run into little corners and say we will contain it here through vaccinations and leave other parts, we are actually just working backwards. Undertakings to donate excess vaccines doses to low-income countries are welcome. We welcome them, we must say upfront. But they are unlikely to make up the shortfall in global vaccine production capacity. To successfully break transmission, we are going to need billions of doses to vaccinate a sufficient number of people, mainly in developing countries. We therefore commend more than 100 countries that have to date supported the proposal that we have put forward, which will help us address this problem with regard to the TRIPS waiver. This is the most practical route that we believe we have to address Africa's vaccine shortages in the short to the medium term. We note that resistance to the waiver proposal is coming from wealthier countries that have already secured more than 75% of available vaccines. We note that. And of course, President Macron has sort of dissected the problem even a lot further by saying that the resistance is coming from those who believe that they have innovated. And having innovated, they just don't want to let their innovation just go for either for free or just to be given to anyone. But we are saying we are at war. We are waging a war, a global war, and there's only one enemy. The one enemy that we all have to defeat requires that for a set time frame that we should allow further production of vaccines, because as it is now, the vaccines that have been produced, even by those who say they've innovated, are not enough to cover all of us. We've got 1.2 billion people on our African continent. Yes, 60% of them need to be vaccinated. It's a huge number. And the production of the vaccines is just not living up to the numbers we need. Even here in South Africa, we are still hamstrung, held back by just the numbers that are not there. Even Stephen Saad, the CEO of Aspen, will tell you that yes, they can make so many, even if they make 1 million a day or whatever, but in the end, we still need more and more vaccines. And it is for this reason that we say alternative approaches to access have to be found, and we've suggested those. They include vaccine sharing and donation and establishing medicine patent pools. Some have also called on developing countries to use existing TRIPS flexibilities to address intellectual property barriers and for a so-called third way, as they put it, through the use of voluntary licenses. However, many of these are solutions that do not take into account the sheer scale of the need that is there. As we prepare for the G7 and the G20 summits, President Macron and I agreed that we are going to work together. We're going to work together specifically on this issue of the vaccine waiver, so that the WTO is able to process the matter as quickly as possible, so that we can talk to our colleagues at the G7 meeting as well as the G20. And in doing so, we will be seeking to get them to agree that we are at war. We've got one enemy, the issue of innovation. One understands it, and we are not against innovation. We are not even beginning to challenge the innovation issue. We say, let us work together to have this waiver for a limited period. That in itself is not going to break the innovation concept, and all it requires is that there should be more access. And if saving lives is important to all of us, this is not too much to ask. And it is for this reason that we say that waiver proposal that has now been supported by so many other countries needs to be put firmly on the WTO agenda so that it is approved. And on this, we are not going to retreat, because for us to retreat means that we are saying our people's lives are not worth much. The lives of our people are worth a great deal. And we do this because we want to save our people's lives. And we're therefore going to continue insisting that this waiver should be there, so that the capacity that resides in our various countries, however much long it takes, should be activated so that the vaccines can be produced. Now today, at this seminar, we've just heard from the people who are in the business, who say, once this can be permitted and allowed, they will be able yes, to have manufacturing bases in a number of places. And finance is not necessarily the problem, because once the waiver has been agreed to, those entities will have business cases which they can go and either borrow money against and be able to get up and running. So as South Africa, we reaffirm our commitment to achieving a balanced outcome that takes the interests of all into account. And we would want the world to also approach this matter in the same form. The discussions that we should have should continue to be held in good faith, to be solutions-oriented, and the negotiations must also take place at the WTO, as President Macron has said, and they should be based on the texts that should now be crafted. The solidarity displayed by the international community since the pandemic broke out has been laudable. It has really assisted many countries that would never have had the capacity to address this pandemic. And we want to see it continuing through support for the WTO proposal. A temporary TRIPS waiver will not just enable us to save lives, as I said, in the short term, in the medium term, but it will also assist us in building that capacity. It will also support the Africa Vaccines Manufacturing Partnership in equipping us to deal with future health emergencies. And President Macron is right when he says we need, as we address this, to deal with the health capacity on the continent as well. Manufacturing vaccines locally is an important step towards African self-reliance and will help us to meet our developmental aspirations. There is existing capacity globally that can be leveraged to ramp up production in the countries of the South. By some estimates, current production capacity of around 3.25 billion doses could be ramped up to 5 billion doses annually. For South Africa's part, we have demonstrated capability in the form of BioVac as well as Aspen, as we had today. It is, however, a sector that is in development. Much of our local manufacturing capacity is centered on formulation, fill and finish, as we had, using imported active pharmaceutical ingredients, the packaging and the cold chain distribution. We are developing a local manufacturing plan to produce vaccines locally through strategic partnerships and technology transfer. Our goal in the end is to cover the entire vaccine production value chain by upgrading existing capacity and bringing new capacity on board. We want to establish new pharmaceutical manufacturing companies that will be able to produce COVID-19 vaccines and other vaccines. We already have what in South Africa we call a black industrialist program to enable those who want to get into this business to become entrants of the vaccine manufacturing process. Now, emerging African manufacturers need technology partners that will help develop their skills base and assist with technology transfer. Now, technology transfer is therefore absolutely important because those countries on the continent, they need to make markets of their own. This requires a commitment for multilateral procurement agencies and donor funders to procure vaccines and medicines from African manufacturers in sustainable volumes. We would like the northern economy countries, be they France, be they America, be they Norway, yes, to purchase vaccines that are made here in Africa so that we make those vaccine manufacturers sustainable. Aspen is one of those. It's a global company, and we are proud of Aspen that they are already manufacturing vaccines and exporting them even to Europe. We will continue to rely on the support of the international community, I must say, particularly partners that we have like France and Germany. We will also need the support of industry for investment, capacity building, intellectual property, and technology transfer. I want to make a call to multinational pharmaceutical companies to reconsider their opposition to this TRIPS waiver. 20 years ago, President Macron referred to this. When South Africa was in the grip of HIV pandemic, we were sued by pharmaceutical manufacturers over access to and manufacturing of antiretroviral medication. By abandoning their legal action then, the manufacturers decided to put people before profits. And that made the whole world enter a new situation with regard to dealing with HIV/AIDS. And they still continue to make money. It paved the way for South Africa and other developing countries to have access to life-saving medication. And we say this is another time where lives have got to be put ahead of the massive profits that can be made for a set period, so that we are able to deal with the COVID-19 and defeat it. This is not about undermining incentives for research or innovation and development. It is about collaborating to save lives. Research into COVID-19 vaccine was the product of international collaboration with significant financial support from the public sector. We agree with that. A number of clinical trials were conducted in developing countries or in developing economies. They came here to even South Africa and a number of countries to come and test these vaccines. And once they have tested them, they say, thank you very much. We now know they are very successful. We're going to use it on our own people in the north. And you will see for yourselves. Goodbye, and off they go. Now, we can't accept that. That is unacceptable. Allowing all countries to manufacture their own vaccines is not about developed countries or pharmaceutical companies extending their largesse to us. This is a matter of social justice. It is a matter of human rights, the most important of them being the right to life. So, Your Excellency, President Macron, we are delighted that you are here, and we welcome your announcement on support for vaccine manufacturing in our country and on the continent. We are immensely encouraged by the French government's support for South Africa's science and innovation research in the form of expertise, development, study scholarships, funding, and tech transfer. And I'm particularly delighted that you're focusing also on human capital, particularly young people. We are also encouraged by the most recent investment commitments by French companies, which will greatly boost our economy and create a number of jobs. I'd like to say this to you in your presence, that we are immensely grateful. We also appreciate past investment pledges that were made during our investment conferences by a number of French companies. We also extend our gratitude to the Federal Republic of Germany for its support for this initiative to boost South Africa's vaccine manufacturing capability. On behalf of the Republic of South Africa, we also thank Germany for its generous donation of ventilators and medical equipment to our National Institute of Communicable Diseases. So do pass on my gratitude to Angela Merkel and say, Thank you very much for the help we've received. This pandemic has taught us valuable lessons. South Africa believes the international community should come together to develop a new international pact on pandemics, whether it is in the form of a treaty or an agreement. We are going to continue to face many more pandemics in the world. And it is time that we have a treaty, a protocol, and an understanding on how we are going to deal with further pandemics that are going to come. It must emphasize the new rules based on equity and solidarity. That must be upfront. It should also address sustainable financing for the World Health Organization. We must also look at how vaccine manufacturing capacity developed during COVID-19 can be repurposed for the future production of other vaccines and related technologies. More than a year since this pandemic brought devastation to countries across the world, COVID-19 vaccines present a glimmer of hope. Let us ensure that this hope is not snatched away from millions of people around the world because they were not born in a well-resourced country. And this is what it is about. Because it's the value of the life of a person who lives in Norway much more than the value of a life when we are facing a pandemic of a person who lives in Eswatini or Lesotho. As this deadly pandemic shows little signs of abating, we are in a race to save lives because we don't know when it is going to end. Now, Africa wants to do things for itself. We want to help ourselves and save our people. And this is where I join you, President Macron, where you say, correctly so, that you help to capacitate Africa so that African countries can be real sovereign states on their own, looking after the welfare of their people. Now, with the right support and collaboration, we will be able to scale up and diversify our production capabilities. We have the capability, the expertise, and the experience, I must say again, in manufacturing vaccines. Above all, we have the will to succeed, not just as South Africa, but as the entire continent. What we are asking for and what we need is the opportunity to realize this bold and noble vision. That's all we ask for as Africans. Countries in the north, yes, have developed much further than us, and their development must also be shared so that we all develop together as the world. I thank you.
Thank you very much, President Ramaphosa. Thank you very much for your statement and response and very insightful remarks, also illustrating the path you have been traveling in making sure that we intensify the struggle for vaccine access. Thank you very much for that. Let's give our President another round of applause. Unfortunately, because of time constraints, we are no longer going to have any questions from the media. We apologize profusely for that, but please feel free through the connections that you have to send your questions, which we can be able to respond to afterwards. We're sorry about that. Can I then now call upon Professor Rees, Helen Rees, who is the chairperson of our South African Health Regulatory Products Authority, SAPRA, to come and give a vote of thanks. Thank you very much. Professor?
So, thank you very much. I have a sentence in French, but I'm slightly hesitant, but I'll try. C'est un grand privilège et un grand honneur de vous recevoir ici, dans l'Université de Pretoria, Monsieur le Président. I should probably stop at this point while I'm ahead. But to Monsieur le Président, Monsieur Macron and our own President Ramaphosa, to Vice Chancellor Tawana Kupe, and Minister Emmanuel Blade in Zamandi, which is now going to stick, you realize. Thank you very much indeed for a really fascinating, I really found it fascinating to listen to you. And I think for everyone here, the thing that struck me as someone who is a global health practitioner is that the interface between politics and global health are just, there is no line. There is no line. And this pandemic has shown us that incredibly powerfully. My role is to say thank you to the speakers and to all present, but also just to say a very few sentences about some of the other vaccine-preventable diseases which we should not forget on our continent. So I'd like to first say thank you so much for the presence of all the honourable ministers, the ambassadors, we have directors general and many senior colleagues here, and we have Minister Jen Spahn. Thank you so much, and thank you for your generosity of time in coming. And I want to say thank you to all the speakers. They are my friends, so I don't have to outline their names. But I think what you've unpacked was an incredible tapestry of what needs to be done. But one thing that struck me about a meeting like this that I think none of us should forget is that the power of collaboration and collegiality and comradeship, and that's why face-to-face meetings, I'm afraid to say, are really good on occasions, and we've all missed them. But I think that it's extraordinarily powerful because it makes bonds, and perhaps it's presumptive, but I feel that there's a relationship that has developed that we felt between the two of you in your dialogue, and those global bonds are extraordinarily powerful and take us further. And I want to also just I'll link it into a story. I was asked to talk about a success story, and I'm going to link it into collegiality and how forming relationships through its science, through manufacturing, through political bonds, through diplomacy is incredibly important. And the one success story I'm going to tell you for our region is about a vaccine called Menafrivac. And for those of you not familiar with this, there is a meningitis belt that goes from Senegal all the way across to Ethiopia. And every year, this meningitis outbreaks absolutely ravaged the population's high mortality and terrible fear, and people left with lifelong disabilities. And so the idea came to develop a vaccine, and Marie-Paul Kieni is sitting there, who was very central to this. And the idea was to develop a vaccine for the region at under $1 a dose. And through a public-private partnership, it involved WHO as well, that was done. And Marie-Paul and myself were at the launch of that vaccine in 2010 in Burkina Faso. 260 million doses later, that meningitis A has almost been eliminated from that meningitis belt. So Marie-Paul and I, you can see, go back quite a while, but unfortunately I do have to admit we're both on COVAX committees together at the moment. And I heard what you said about COVAX, and I think these are things that we must also then internalize and take back, because it's very nice at a meeting like this to say something at at a diplomatic level. But the honesty is we've got to get it right, and if we're not getting it right, we have to go back and rethink of it. But I want to say just something else then about other vaccines. So we've made extraordinary progress in the African region. So since 2000, routine immunization coverage, a signal of that, has changed from about 53% coverage to about 77% coverage across the region. Now that is extraordinary, and that is saving millions of lives. But the bad news is that this continent has more children with 0 doses of vaccines than any other continent. Our measles deaths we've also reduced by 85%. But the bad news is while we were talking about Ebola in the DRC, more people and more children died of measles in the DRC than did of Ebola. And then polio, wild polio virus. We have eliminated wild polio virus from our continent with the use of vaccines, with the last cases being in Nigeria. But the bad news is we now have outbreaks all over the region of vaccine-derived poliovirus. We need vaccines and not just COVID vaccines, and we need the capacity to manufacture. We need to get those vaccines out to the people and the children who are not receiving them. And I want to just recall one other thing, as President Ramaphosa, as you were speaking. Some years ago, there was an Addis declaration through the African Union, which brought together health ministers and finance ministers, and there was a major discussion in Addis, and I was there. And one of the demands from the African health ministers was to say, we want to manufacture our own vaccines. That was probably 6 years ago. And many people in that big meeting were skeptical. And most of them were from I'm afraid to say, from developed countries in the north, saying it cannot be done. People don't understand how complicated it is to develop a vaccine and what needs to be done to develop that vaccine. And yet, then we left that declaration on a shelf until now. And so that declaration, and John Nkengasong was saying this at lunchtime as well, we have to actually make these commitments living and real, and we have to get vaccines out there. So I think, going back to this with collaboration and collegiality and comradeship, as per fraternity, I think that we can do this, and I've been enormously impressed by all of the speakers here today, but also just the true understanding in the content of the debate that we heard between the two of you, of what really needs to be done, and the fact that now there's a bone in the mouth, and we're going to hang on to that, and we're going to pursue this until we actually do get vaccines manufactured in our continent. So with that, I will say thank you. Thank you so much to all of the speakers, and I will hand back to Minister Emmanuel Blade in Zamani.
Thank you very much, Professor Rees. It looks like I'm in trouble from today onwards. We've come to the end of this seminar. Let me just conclude by saying, firstly, this seminar couldn't have come at a more appropriate time as we are negotiating the TRIPS waiver, Minister Patel. Secondly, let me just add my last thank you to the two presidents. It was so good, and we appreciate this, that you decided not to just lock yourself at the union buildings and have these discussions and engagements, but you decided to bring it out to the people so that this becomes a broader engagement. And you are setting a good example that let's open a debate, a discussion, and engagement, as you both say, for the sake of saving lives. Thank you very much once more for that. Let's now not only give the speakers and our two presidents a good round of applause, but a good round of applause adding yourselves into that for having been a very well-disciplined audience. Thank you very much. With that, then, if we can allow our two presidents and the Vice-Chancellor to please, that we release them now before all the rest of us are able to leave the room. Thank you very much and congratulations to all of you. Siyabonga. Merci beaucoup.